Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Wealthy Retailer Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Holman, and my behind-the-scenes guy, my right-hand man here, Rob Lawlisher with Road 55. Morning, Rob. Hey,
Good
here
morning.
we are recording for June 25th.
Yep.
I should take note of that date. June 25th is my 32nd wedding anniversary, so I should.
I thought you were going to say birthday for a moment. I was going to call it
well, I got a new
BS
post-COVID haircut here, so you know.
So you've got a couple days to forget to buy a gift.
I do. I got it. Yeah. I'll figure something out tomorrow.
You got it covered. Yeah, pressure's on. Right on. Well, we got some good stories to talk about this week that I'm excited. You know, there's always something different going on. A story came out about some of the most trusted brands by Canadian consumers, so that's pretty interesting. Our friends to the east, the great province of Saskatchewan, performing much better in the nation when it comes to the decline in sales, so we'll chat about that. Indigo CEO weighs in on, some strong words for the government, and not that Dan never has any, but we'll chat on that line too. A big new opening in Calgary, which is great to hear at this time of the year and everything that's going on. And you know what? I saw this headline, and kudos to the copywriter. I love a good headline, and I saw the words "revenge shopping," and it's like, okay, we're totally talking about revenge shopping.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
So I'll take us into the first story, Dan. It comes to us from the Business in Vancouver group, the BIV.com. And it talks about the most trusted brands by Canadian consumers. So they had just recently done this, as they do for, I believe it's the 6th year that they've done it. This is the Gustafson School of Business at UVic. And it talks about, trust in consumer brands, unfortunately, is at an all-time low. But organizations still have that opportunity to respond by showing they care for the well-being of their customers and their staff, and making sure their products are available according to this new study. So there's some definitely recognizable names on there, Dan. Why don't tell us a bit about what do you think about this story?
These guys from BVic, they do a great job in these studies, and they have done them for several years. As we talked about maybe last week with Stats Canada, we're really only seeing very small sample sets, and they're not reaching out. I mean, this audience, I think, focused a lot of energy on 18 to 35. And so we're certainly seeing that little bit of a younger audience, come through. There's a couple of things that stood out for me in this article. Number one was the fact that CTV News was one of the most recognizable brands, not a consumer brand, doesn't belong in the story, but here they were.
Right.
Being talked about in the same vein as as Costco and Home Hardware and Home Depot, Canadian Tire, Mountain Equipment Co-op, and so we talk about this brand awareness, and the fact that we're seeing change in that brand awareness speaks to the power of the independent retailer.
Okay.
When we think about asking questions like this, which of these is your most recognizable brand? Here's a 5-way tie. You pick the winner.
Right.
Home Hardware, Lego, Bose, Band-Aid, and Kleenex. Well, we didn't ask them about, Bella Moss Boutique in Sherwood Park or in St. Albert.
Yeah.
We asked them about Home Hardware. So no wonder they show up. And even when it's not in a multiple choice vein, I am still subconsciously weighted, by that silent salesman in my ear, and whether that's the television or the radio. And that in the last 90 days, we have had so much brainwashing, so much shit pumped into our heads that it's hard to get past that. And so my thing as I read through this article really was, the fact that we're not seeing bigger brands, or that we're seeing brands slide down the ladder, is because people have a more social focus. And when we say social focus, it is now the recognition, of the soccer mom and dad in my community that owns the local store.
Right.
And whether that's the grocer, the apparel store, the pet store, the hardware store, there is more weight given now to that retailer that is, surviving this in our local community. Yes, our communities have Home Hardwares and Canadian Tires and those great stores, and there's nothing wrong with those great stores. And it's not that their brand power is diminishing. They're just being, they're being pushed to become more social.
Is this is obviously, this is 30,000 foot view, big macro view of brands. Right. As maybe some of the what we've known as the bigger brands in our world, the trust declines. It's more trust is going up when you take that micro look in communities that just, I trust my local brand more, that because I know them, see them, talk to them, and
right.
And so does opportunity come out of that?
Well, I want you to know this first and foremost. These articles. I mean, I think this was Carla Wilson. She's a Times columnist. Her job is to write a headline that gets people to read. These are the brands most trusted by Canadian consumers in 2020. Well, listen, I'd argue that there isn't a trusted brand in 2020. We don't have a good enough sample size. For 2.5 or 3 months, people haven't had the opportunity to support their brand. So the article, while well written, the headline really focused on, hey, we're losing trust. I mean, there's an inference that we're losing trust in big brands, and it's just not true. It's not true. And this is a small sample size. And we went from January to February, to come back out and do another study in April or May, and we go from studying 7,000 people to 1,000 people. Right. That is not a good cross-section of the Canadian consumer.
Yep.
And I think for a long time, brands have been challenging themselves. Big brands have been challenging themselves to maintain their, household status. And the independent retailer fights them every single day. And I'd rather buy from Lindsay, than maybe Canadian Tire. I know Lindsay.
Yeah.
I see her at the hockey arena, right? And so that there's not enough study done at the independent level to really give them an opportunity.
No, and I guess in all reality too, that level of community survey is probably not going to happen anytime in the near future. But right. I think the spirit of what we're talking about is just that, and lends itself to the opportunity for the small boutique retailers to. There's so much trust opportunity to be gained out there that's exciting. So
and I think one thing I glossed over and I shouldn't have is truly the power of these brands delivering a social empowering message, of us really focusing on well-being. And I think maybe a little further down in one of the articles, there's some talk about Starbucks and what Starbucks did. And I do believe that not just the younger audience, not just the 18 to 35, but every single person with $5 in their pocket to spend is quite likely to support someone that supports their local social economy, as well as, their business economy. And I think we want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that, we need social protection in communities as well as economic protection.
Totally.
And these brands that support that, are always going to they're always going to be one step ahead of those that don't.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about a brand that you should know and trust, and if not, get to know them. And that's sponsor of our podcast. This one's brought to you by Canadian Retail Solutions. From the latest point of sale software to e-commerce solutions, from Heartland Retail to Retail Pro to Shopify and more, they've got the retail solutions to make your store more successful. Let them help you find your cutting-edge retail solution today. So be sure to check out retailbycrs.com. Okay, our next story. If you're going to have to forgive me saying it this way, but I have to. If I can read the card correctly, this story hails from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. And good story for the province that they've weathered the national storm. That Saskatchewan has the lowest decline in retail sales for April. It's still a drop. It was 14.8% from March to April, compared to the national average, which was 26.4%. So I don't know, Dan, if be the best of the worst, but it's obviously Saskatchewan not hit as hard as the rest of the country. And I kind of asked the question too. So if you are doing better than if you're down less than 26% and being better than that, are you doing okay right now?
Yeah, I mean, you're doing okay. And again, think about where we're seeing the most impacted areas of COVID-19, and I don't just mean infection driven impact, but even economic impact. It is where our cities in Canada are the most dense.
Yeah. Right.
Dense population, is driving some of this infection physically and economically.
Right.
And Saskatchewan is not dense, in any sense of the meaning. I'm not going to pick on our friends to the east. Listen, Saskatchewan has done a very good job of managing both, the impact, the disruption that COVID, presented, and the spread of any kind of infection. I think it still remains the lowest province. I think it's still amongst our most northern provinces, with very, very little. And so their economic impact has been, while still 23 or 24% down. I think that they were 24% year over year and 14 or 15 month over month. Yep. So, even 25% is a manageable decline in business. It's
all things considered right now. Yeah.
All things considered, 25% decline in business is manageable.
Yeah.
There's enough ability to recover, that 25% if that's all it is. But if you're on the downward trend, and staring from 25 to 30 instead of 25 to 20, okay, we've got a bigger challenge.
Right.
And it's funny that this story came out of Moose Jaw. These agriculturally driven communities don't have bigger retail stores in them. They rely heavily on, the local independent essential retail. And when you look at, one of my favorite stores in Moose Jaw is Cowtown. Cowtown's in 4 or 5 Saskatchewan towns.
What do they have there? What's like cowboy boots or what?
Well, okay, good question. What is Cowtown? Holy cow. Cowtown is an all-in-one store, for that cowboy, that farmer, that working guy in Saskatchewan. And they sell everything from feed, animal health and equipment, through apparel, through pet. They're probably still in Saskatchewan the leader in pet sales.
Wow.
And it's in communities like Moose Jaw and Regina and Saskatoon, and they continue to be. They are an essential. So while they may not have been able to sell apparel, they still had the ability to sell pet. And we know pet at the start of this thing. We saw double and triple comp numbers as people sort of started to nest a bit and look after their stuff.
Yeah.
So, Saskatchewan really, not only have they done a good job, they're not as dense, and their retail is much more, especially in Moose Jaw, much more essential than luxury.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's an interesting take. Like that may have not been affected as much because, like you said, they had just more of that. More of a mix of that local retailer rather than some of obviously we saw the big chains get hit really, really hard.
The more dense those communities are, I think the more challenged we see them. And if you look at what's happening right now, you look in Florida or Arizona, where the big retail stores are saying, hold on a minute, we're going to pull it back a gear. Apple announced the other day they're going to close stores in Arizona and Florida right now
Yep.
reclose,
Yep.
to regroup themselves.
How do you think, just on the topic of we'll say the spread out factor, I look at even like in just any individual store that, our models before were get as many people in as fast a time as you can in as small a space. Like that was the formula. What are you hearing, Dan, when it comes to the stores? How are they doing managing 3 customers at a time? Like, is it a nicer flow through the whole day? Obviously, those big spikes are gone, but what have you heard? What have you seen?
So it really does now speak to scale, depending on the kind of store we are and where we are. We see some of those athleisure brands with 3 and 4 hour waits to get in their stores.
Yeah.
Crazy lineups to get in the stores, and you drive by your favorite dress shop and there's 1 car in the parking lot. And so it really does depend on the sector, the city. But overall, if we could sort of broad stroke, we're seeing better engagement.
Yeah.
People are walking through the door now more than ever with a determination to buy.
Yeah.
I think maybe near the end of our talk today, we're going to talk about, revenge shopping. And isn't that part of what we're seeing, this pent up demand? And when you walk into a store now, I've said this for a long time. I've maintained this. People got in their car, women, combed their hair, men put their pants on. If you're me, I got to put pants on to leave the house. We prepare ourselves to leave. We get in our car and we drive to a store. We drove to that store with this predetermined, disposition to buy. We've made this decision. We have predetermined we're going to buy something if the experience is what I need it to be. And now more than ever, I have a demonstrated, predetermination to buy. Yeah. And that's what's happening in stores today. So while I might have 30 or 40 or 50% decline in traffic, my conversion ratio is up and my average sale is up on comparable numbers. Now, that doesn't mean I'm rocking and rolling and swimming in cash in my store. It just means that those 3 people that walk in my store today are quite likely to buy versus out of the 6 that walked in yesterday, that I only had 3.
If you can hang on to that level of service and that, getting that average ticket up when the volume of numbers do come back,
right,
should bode, quite well.
I think it will.
Yep.
And I think that those customers that are standing outside the store waiting to buy, that get in some form of a lineup to walk in the store, we really need to honor that commitment and make sure that they leave with a total solution.
Yeah.
Don't sell them a damn t-shirt. That's not why they waited. They need you to wait on them. They need you to serve them, and they need to walk out with 3 bags full.
Yeah,
right.
Perfect.
Right.
Okay, our next story from bnnbloomberg.ca. You can check that out. And if you haven't, folks, be sure to sign up for the newsletter. Go to Retail by CRS and sign up, because we've got the links to these stories as well as many others that, the news you need to know. We curate it for you. So here's a story. Indigo CEO, Heather Iseman, she weighed in pretty heavily with some pretty pointed words to the government that, what they need right now is some very affordable, low-cost loans to get through the next, she's identifying the next 2 years and really feels it's a small give on behalf of the government, and she does feel that if they're, to use the term, if they're cavalier about jobs at this moment, she feels it will take half a decade to come back. So she's frustrated right now. I know we've shared some words about the government in the past, but what was your thoughts on this story, Dan?
I really wish, I love Amanda Lang. Great, does a great job, and Karen's now my new favorite CEO, and not because she's advocating for the government. I'm anti-government in most things. I don't feel like they do a good job of keeping their finger on the pulse. But in this story, you know, she does a really great job of I don't want to say of highlighting what's needed, but Heather really does a good job of identifying what's going to happen as a CEO, you know, as a visionary. I mean, CEO is a weird, always has been. It's, I mean, a weird label. I use it, I throw it around, but it really, you know, that CEO, that chief in any business, their job is to climb to the top of the trees and look forward.
Yep.
You know, and be able to see where they're headed and guide their team and lead their team towards towards a greater good, towards a better future.
Yeah.
And today, you know, we're not being honest with each other. We're not being honest from a media perspective. We're not being honest from a government perspective. And we're not being honest as business leaders. You know, we're all trying to play the, you know, can't wait for fall, can't wait for holiday. Oh, this is going to be a 12-month recovery. Well, it's not true. We know, you know, that losing the first quarter of 2020 or the first 6 months of 2020, you know, is going to take us, you know, at least 2 years to recover from. You've heard me say this before. Every single retailer out there, even those that are well capitalized, is $200 from living on the street.
Right.
You know, Heather, you know, is in a very well capitalized business and an important business. But that doesn't matter how well they're capitalized, you know, if we don't build some sustainability into this. And, you know, she's saying if I had the opportunity to yank on the government's ear, I'd say, hey, you've got to recognize that this is probably a 2-year challenge and that we need to protect our employees through this rest of the year. For the next 5 or 6 months, we need to protect, you know, the queues needs to be in place to help support bringing workers, you know, back into our stores, but not just bringing workers back in, but freeing up the restraint on our cash flow to drive our business forward, to give us the comfort to know that, okay, wait a minute, I'm okay through the end of the year. Now I can start to be more visionary. Our challenge today is quite simply that, you know, we have no idea where we're headed. Right. And the mistake that the government is making, this is highly opinionated, but it's who I am. The mistake they're making is continuing with a CERB instead of the queues. You know, I recognize that people need, you know, that subsidy. I recognize that, but it might be better used, you know, in the business community to bring people back to work, to give them purpose and meaning. You know, you'll give them a hand up, not a hand out. Yeah. You know, help the business put people back to work. And I feel like the mistake we're making is by not focusing on the business. Heather talks about the fact that there are 1.6 million people connected to that retail sector, you know, and that 1.6 million people, there's 40% of them or more that are at home on their couch.
Right.
You know, we've got to help businesses get back to work. We've got to help people get back through our front doors and in a safe and sanitized manner. But if we don't push people back through our front doors, you know, recovery is a half a decade.
It's gonna be tough. So do you think it is that kind of your opinion? It's moving in Canada from the CERB program to the wage subsidy program. You think that's the best fit right now?
I do think if I have to lean on some level of subsidy, it's going to be one that's connected to putting people to work. The challenge for me, I mean, I think Heather asked for perhaps even low-cost loans for a couple of years. Yeah. Great idea. I think it would go a long way. And I think if it was focused on the right businesses, it would help us to jumpstart, you know, the stalled economy. And we are stalled. There is no other way to look at this. We are stalled. And putting dollars in the right place will help to jumpstart us. Yep. And whether that's a low-cost loan, probably my second choice, you know, or, you know, the wage protection, and even in a better monitored way, you know, having access to services and resources, you know, that can make a difference. And I'm thinking, help me here. Instead of me making a tax contribution, give me that money back to demonstrate how I can drive performance in my community.
Yep.
And that happens at a municipal, provincial, and federal level. There are ways that we can help each other, with a hand up.
Let's talk about one step at a time, I say, and let's look at that one step. And this is our opportunity. Dan, I want to share a tip with us that for that retailer out there, that one step that's just going to help them this week.
Okay, here we are. We're sitting in our weekly what we call our level 10 meetings. Level 10, we want to score meetings. We want to get a 10 out of 10. So here we are, company-wide level 10 meeting. And I'm talking with one of our technical account managers, Eduardo, in our office, and we're talking about the things that surprise us. And Eduardo is like, well, people are using 10, 15, 20% of their system, of their business management tool.
Yep.
And here we are. We talked about this several weeks ago. Use your point of sale system for all that it's worth. If we only use it as a cash register, we're missing the opportunity to better manage our business.
How many would you say today use it simply as that? Their cash register?
On a scale, if I look at, single store through enterprise level businesses, the smaller the company, the less likely they are to be using the analytics or the depth of their business management tool. Yeah. And it is not a slight on them. I get it. They're wearing 10 hats.
Yeah.
But that's why your point of sale partners, I use that term over and over again, partners exist. Pick up the phone. How can you help me? Yeah. What am I not seeing in my point of sale system? What am I not doing?
Well, and to not let it go 11th hour and all of a sudden, by fire hose, I've got to try and
figure this out.
Just that working a little bit at a time and getting better understanding with it. Because to your
you're
point,
going to see
there's so much that the retailer will get out of these systems if they just learn to use what's at their fingertips.
And I think that if we recognize that it is a valuable tool, it's not just another arrow. It is a tool. It's a valuable tool in the business that can help me tell the future. It can help me be better at predicting what's going to happen. I go back to Heather talking about, I've got to have money to be able to clear my markdown goods. Well, the first thing that retailers need to understand is, what does my aged inventory look like? Right. How much money is parked, buried in dust in my store, and how do I convert that?
Yeah.
And who bought this in the past? There's so much information buried in that tool that, hey, what's the one report I could run that would help me better manage my business? Pick up your phone, call your POS partner, not provider, your partner, and ask them to tell you something you don't know about your point of sale system.
Right on. Well, here's something I didn't know. I was excited to read this headline. New Canadian apparel brand Doer opened a new storefront in Calgary. I love this quote. He's, expanding into Calgary. He's been on their radar for a couple of years. And, openly admits, although opening a new retail location in this current climate is not a simple task, it hasn't clouded their enthusiasm. And I really zero in on that line. I like that a lot. So tell us about this, Dan. What's your thoughts?
Listen, I love this brand Doer, and it has two different things that I really admire about the brand. Yes, their dedication to continue moving forward. Don't really care about their south of the border strategy, but certainly moving forward in Canada. They've got, 2 now going on 3, going to be really great experiential stores. Their founder and CEO has a vision that is exciting, and they've chosen those hot spots, or what are identified as hot spots, to open their stores. When you look at, where they are in Toronto and Vancouver, and now, they're going to be in an old Lululemon store. Right. Lululemon sounds kind of weird, but in a former Lululemon space, on 4th Street in Calgary. And Gary, the CEO, Gary Leonard is his name. The founder, Gary Leonard is his name.
Yeah.
is confident in their performance, but not only at the retail level, also at the wholesale level. And one of the things that really struck me as absolutely newsworthy was the launch of what they call Next.
Okay.
Next is their model that allows the consumer to buy into a production run at a reduced rate. I mean, it is a sound business model where the retailer is, think of this like GoFundMe.
Yeah.
They've created a categorical.
Futures.
Yeah. And I think that right now, when you think about how the Next program works, they launch a product, you commit to it, you buy it, and 4 to 8 weeks later, it's delivered to you. And so you're getting the latest trend, not to mention, listen, the brand is fabulous.
Right.
He talks about, he was really looking for a jean that he could get off of his bike and walk into the boardroom. That's the kind of denim they are. And great T-shirts.
It's a good way to describe that need, right?
Right. That's what I want to be able to jump off my bike and walk in the boardroom and not, listen, if I jump off my bike, there's no way I'm walking into a boardroom. I'm walking into the shower. But
so this program Next, are you seeing more of this, Dan, out there where like definitely cutting edge of okay, we're gonna right down to the nickel figure out exactly what we're gonna make? What's that look like?
And this is really, we're not seeing a lot of this. And when you think about how they're gauging demand, how they're measuring, they believe that this is a less wasteful environment, a more economical environment, and they're changing with this opportunity. And you end up, the presentation is, that you're going to save money. And it's quite simple. They introduce a new product or an existing product in a new color or new wash as denim goes. It's a new wash. And for 3 weeks, they launch that product, and you get the chance to buy it, cool, at some discount that might only be 10%. I think their last launch was a T-shirt, a $44 T-shirt or $48 T-shirt that you could buy for $40 kind of thing. Okay. And at the end of that launch, that 3-week launch, they manufacture the product. So now they're going out and finding out what their demand is ahead of producing product. And not just finding out the demand, they're getting paid to pre-produce their products. So super intelligent. If you're a retailer thinking about, oh my gosh, how do I manage a launch? Build one item, measure your demand.
Well, and talk about bringing your customer in and like really making them feel a part of the giving them that specialness factor,
right?
When we're going to make you feel special to give us your money. So it's super cool. Really like that, and definitely looks like a store everyone should go check out as soon as they can.
Yeah, their stores are great stores too. Kid-friendly, adventurous kind of stores, and they do fit men and women, and great denim.
Yeah.
It's a great story. I love it. And I love the fact that they're saying, it's challenging to open a store during this time, but come July 2nd, we're launching our store in Calgary, and we're going to continue our talk.
Do you think that's many of them, sometimes right now it's hard to look past next week or the next month.
Right.
Do most of these folks, like, you just got to come in and at least it's a 5-year window or 10-year. What does that look like, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think it's 5 years.
A little far out.
It's funny, we've been doing some interviewing, for business development at Canadian Retail Solutions.
Yeah.
And the number one question that people have asked is, what does 5 years down the road look like? Yeah. Well, we haven't heard that conversation for a long time,
right.
And it speaks to people's, need for comfort, need for, maybe a little less change. Now they want to know what you're doing 5 years from now.
Yeah.
But as a business owner,
we're trying to figure out September.
It's great to have a 5 or 10-year goal.
Yeah.
You're that BHAG that we talked about before, your big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah.
But you're only looking forward by 3 years and then backing up to the next 3 months.
Yeah.
Your plan, your vision doesn't really need to be Your vision needs to be 5 or 10 out, but your traction needs to be in the next 3 years. And these
That's
companies,
a good way to frame it up.
these companies that are able to rein their vision in and say, where do we need to get traction in our business to be able to achieve that vision? If I want to be here in 3 years, where do I need to be in the next year? And if I'm going to be here in 1 year, what do I need to do in the next 90 days? And retailers today, not just retailers, anyone in business today needs to have a firm grasp on what their next 90 days looks like.
Well, this next story, in terms of what the next 90 days look like, it talks about what the past 90 days has been, and that's all this pent-up demand. So this story comes to us from the Philadelphia Inquirer, inquirer.com. We'll have the link in the newsletter. Again, I mentioned at the beginning, I love the headline that revenge shopping is really driving the retail and restaurant spending. And, the story talks about, it's payback for being cooped up for 2.5 months.
For sure.
How long, Dan, does that last, in your opinion? Is it part of the new norm, or will it phase out in a month or so? What do you think there?
100% will absolutely phase out, but the phase out will be dependent on the pocket that you live in. Again, we talk about Philly. This happens to be in Philadelphia. One of my favorite stores of all time is in Philadelphia. Skirt, Maureen Doran, just absolutely love her and her business model to death.
Shout out to Skirt.
Yeah. And so, in Philly, this is a city that was really locked down, and had some challenge, with the protests. I'm not going to call them, with the protests. They had some challenge. And so now, as things have settled a little bit, you're seeing people come back with this bit of vengeance, almost, pent up frustration and anger. And it's not just in Philly. This story just happened to come from the Inquirer. And totally. I looked at it and went, oh, the Inquirer, this has got to be worth reading.
That's a different Inquirer.
I didn't realize it was a different Inquirer. No. But I think you're seeing that pent-up demand in other markets as well. And depending on how locked down a community was, we're seeing more and more dedication to getting back out there and replenishing the comforts in my past, in my life. And I think, as I talked about earlier, some of those great athleisure brands having 3 and 4 hour waits to get into their store, that's all about pent up demand. That's not me needing a new Air Jordan. That's pent up demand. And I love the fact that people want to get out there and support those stores. Yeah,
totally. There's going to be a lot of pent up hug demand. Everyone just wants a hug, right?
And you notice that even that picture that they used in the article, it was a store chocked full of apparel, women's apparel, and one customer in the store.
Right.
It's not like they were body checking each other or throwing the high elbow to get at product. It was they're restricting traffic flow, which creates more. I mean, think about this. Think about supply and demand. Our supply has really been choked off. The supply being the availability to go and shop. So we choked down supply, which has created excess demand. It's spread that 90-day demand. We've taken that 90-day demand, and now we've sort of bolstered it into, or blocked it down into this last 2 or 3 weeks. And so we've choked the supply down, which has increased demand.
Well, in so many ways too, you could always buy that shirt, but the supply of the experience of buying that shirt is what got choked out. And I guess what's refreshing, especially from a brick and mortar retail perspective, is that is definitely what was missed the most, was the experience of that purchase. So
yeah, for sure.
Okay, Dan. Well, boy, we covered a lot of great headlines this week. Why don't you take us home here?
Yeah. So, hey, listen, guys, thank you so much for listening to the Wealthy Retailer podcast. If you've not subscribed to the podcast, head over to your favorite podcast platform, search out the Wealthy Retailer, click the subscribe button, throw us a comment, share it, like it, love it, don't love it, give us a little something to talk about. And for sure, catch retail by CRS.com. Sign up for the newsletter. Copy of this, podcast is always available there. Plus all of the other articles that we didn't talk about. So I think there was probably 5 or 6 others that were super worthy of conversation
this week. That talking about how proactive landlords are getting to get future tenants. Collaboration. I'm a big fan of that. A story about I love the term. You don't have to carry all the freight yourself. Looking for those collab opportunities. There's a new shopping mall app came out in trying to support all of its retailers, not just in the mall, but other places. So that's interesting too, letting you search for thousands of products. So that stuff's all in the newsletter. As Dan said, be sure to sign up at retailbycrs.com. Folks, thank you so much for joining us on the Wealthy Retailer Podcast, brought to you by Canadian Retail Solutions. Remember, at their core, they believe in having real and relevant relationships. They offer solution-based sales and services. They maintain a client-centered bottom-line focus, and they provide you with credible and complete care. They exist to make retailers better. Thanks for joining us this week. Be sure to tune in each week as we capture the retail headlines you need to know.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.